Welcome into the Wealth Lounge. Ryan Dunstan here. I have a special guest for you, Miss Nadgele Zephir from EXP, Realtor down in the DMV, doing her thing, investment property here in Baltimore. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about generational wealth, how she helps clients leverage the asset, how she helps you obtain the asset. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So, Nadgele, how are you?
I'm good, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So listen, tell me a little bit about you. How did you find yourself in DC? And we were talking a little bit more about this before we started rolling, but talk to me about the unique journey you've had getting here into the DMV area and then starting on your real estate career.
Yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity to share my story. So I first came to DC or the DMV area about 4 years ago. At the time I was dating my now husband, my boyfriend, who lived here, and so we were doing a long distance relationship. And in 2020, right before the pandemic, I actually came to visit him, and I stayed basically. Yeah. So I've been here ever since, and it's really been a nice journey. I'm enjoying the area and loving meeting different people in the area.
Yeah. So I mean, I was telling you that the pandemic has a lot of war stories connected to it, but your journey seems to be one of the fairy tale journeys that has connected to one of the worst seasons in some other people's lives.
Yeah.
Transitioning from where, Montreal down in the DMV based off of an unknown, didn't know it was going to happen. That's pretty cool. So listen, talk to me a little bit about how you got into real estate though. How was that transition?
Yeah, so I've always had an interest for the real estate industry, just for a deep love for property in itself. Both on like the aesthetic side, I love everything interior design, interior decorating, but also what the vehicle investment the property represents, right? So I've always had a love for that. And so back when I lived in Montreal, Canada, I was a realtor. I was a realtor for about 3 years there. Left the industry, and now I'm back on this side of the border in real estate. So always had a love for it, for all the reasons I've just mentioned. And maybe one thing I could add is also the vehicle it represents is that ability to build wealth through real estate, which for me is the core of my love for real estate.
Yeah, so let's talk about the core, because I agree with you. There's something about changing the financial trajectory of somebody's financial future, because we know that that's generational, right? And that's going to have a lasting impact. What does that mean to you? How does that feel, being the person that navigates that sort of transition?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for starters, for me, this was a big. The moment I realized how much you could do with real estate in terms of building wealth, in terms of passing that wealth to your kids, and being able to lay the foundation of financial independence for you and for them. I think the minute I understood that, I was like, okay, I have a goal now. I have a personal goal to make that happen for myself and my family, but also it developed into a goal to help other people do that. When I talk to friends and family, they're all interested in investing in real estate, but a lot of people don't know how or where to start, or they get afraid when they hear about, like, say, the interest rates or the market trends. And so that's really where I've grown a love to help people overcome these obstacles and get their feet wet and get in the game.
I can absolutely relate to that, right? Because my transition into real estate was sort of the same. Once I found some new stuff out, I was like, no, you got to learn it. You have to know. You have to know. And I just felt this overwhelming sense of urgency to make sure that everyone that I was connected to understood what I now had just, found out about. So now we're talking about you being a solution. And that you still have to have something about you that can be trusted in order to continue to be that solution. How do you approach that when you're working with your clients, family members? How do you approach the safety that people must feel
Yep.
in order for them to trust you with this sort of transition?
Yeah. I think it's sort of, because we didn't talk about my background, sort of, because I said I work in real estate for about 3-4 years in Canada.
Right.
Then I had a gap period and I'm back at it. So I think it's important to mention that between those two phases or periods of my life, I was for close to 17 years in the human resource.
17 years.
In the human resource management field. And so everything related to HR has given me that, has helped me build the skills to be able to listen to people, to really deeply understand their goals, their needs, and help them come up with strategies to reach them.
Yes.
So, and that's the core of advising and counseling kind of way. Not
Right.
counseling in the sense
Yes.
of therapy, but advising.
Yes.
So that advisory role that I play, when I sit with people, it's not about me. It's not about my own goals, but it's about them.
Yeah.
So I take the time to listen to what they're telling me. I take the time to help them get clarity on their goals. And then from that point, we come up with a strategy. And so when I operate in that space, people automatically feel heard and seen, and then we can come up with a winning solutions for them.
Yeah, I love that, because one of the hardest things for salesmen to do sometimes is listen.
Yeah.
Because you feel like you only have a certain amount of time
Yes.
to really get them to understand what you want them and need them to understand.
Yeah.
And, given the heart posture from which I hear from you, similar to mine, we care about what we're trying to get you to understand. It's not just a transaction for us.
Yeah.
A lot of times I go about that with the kinds of questions that I ask. I know with HR, you guys are real attentive with crossing T's and dotting I's.
Yeah.
So you guys pay close attention. And then when you also being in HR, you have that communication where you understand the exchange from a person, in order to get what you need. But I'm big on questions, right? To learn more. So how do you go about your consultations? What's your niche? What's the way that you approach your beginning stages with your client?
Yeah, thanks for that question. You nailed it. It's the asking the right questions that really sets the tone for my relationship with my clients. So I'll never jump into any conclusion or have preconceived ideas about what you want, but we'll take the time to ask those questions so I can figure out what is it that you want. And so a consultation for me would be a 30 to 40-minute conversation, whether on the phone or on video conference, when I get to, really get a sense of who you are, what are your real estate goals, or what's your timeline? Why is it important for you to acquire a property or whatever your goal is?
Yeah.
And so once I get a better sense of what that is, then we can determine if I'm a good fit for you. Because that's one thing too. I think a lot of sales people, or they see real estate like just selling homes. I see my role, as I said earlier, as an advisor, and I realize that I might not be a good fit for everyone, and that's okay. As long as we understand that, then we can work together or not.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that too, because you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, right? And as an early, real estate professional in this business, on the mortgage side of things anyway, that was a hard lesson for me. It was hard for me to learn that I'm not for everybody, even though I wanted everyone to learn what I had learned.
Yes.
And that was a little bit more of a humbling moment about this business. This business has a way of humbling
Yes.
you. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And speaking about humbling, man, we're in a difficult market right now. This market is really, really humbling a lot of real estate professionals. What are some market trends that you're noticing? Heading into, you just did your consultation, and now you guys have found that you guys are a good fit. How are you, having conversations with your clients about what you're noticing in the surrounding markets, depending upon what their needs are?
Right. I think one of the biggest challenges right now is to get people over the fear of what's going on in the market, because we have way more access to information. We hear over the news, we listen to podcasts and whatnot, and we hear about either the interest rates rising or the price of homes rising, or all these news that can sort of deter someone from buying or selling. And so I tend to help them navigate whatever market by looking strategically at what they're trying to do and coming up with a solution for their unique situation. So in terms of what I'm seeing for trends in the industry, I will say that, and maybe the interest rates are part of the reasons why this is happening as well, but I'm seeing a lot of people being more open to move into suburban areas that where, the same amount of money they can qualify for, it will give them more for their buck outside of the main cities. And they'll give them access to bigger properties with maybe a bigger lot. Whereas before they wanted to stay more like in the city.
Right? City central.
City central. So that's one thing I'm seeing. One other thing I'm seeing more and more, and I'm getting requests from clients too, is homes that are sort of energy efficient. So thinking about either solar panels or ways for the home to be energy efficient and to reduce their environmental footprint. I would say that's also an interesting trend I've been noticing.
So you're kind of approaching the inflation battle on the back end there too, trying to keep the in-home living expenses down a bit.
Yes, that too. Yep, absolutely.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Like I said, we're in such a difficult market. Inventory's low, and with people having to make some strategic decisions, when these offers are being, sent in. And how are you approaching the negotiation side of things, right? You know that it's difficult. You know that we're working now. People are being strategic, having to move to certain portions, like you said, in suburbs, which is kind of shortening their window. I mean, kind of limiting their window a little bit there too. How do you approach that negotiation for your client, and how do you approach it going toward the seller's side of things as well?
So on that end, what's important to me is to do as much research as I can around the property that we're trying to purchase and in the market, the local market that we're moving into. And so when I talk about the research, is understanding that singular property, doing a lot of research around what has been done on the property or around the property, trying to get a sense of the other party's motivations as well, so we can play our cards around that, and trying to negotiate strategically for my client's interest, for my client's best interest. So I'll really make sure that I can get the most information and try to propose offers that would be best for my clients. So based on the condition of the home, if we can get seller rebates on certain aspects, these are the strategies I'll try to go for. Closing assistance, we won't shy away to asking for it. The worst we can hear is no.
Right.
So I'll really try to use all the strategies I can to get the most for the clients that I'm representing.
This will be the first time that they've heard seller rebate. Now, I know what it is, but I can't be the one to explain it because of where I am in this business. And I would love for you to just open up a little bit about that. Tell us a little more about the seller rebate, when the offer, when the accept, when the, when it can be taken advantage of.
Right. So in simple terms, a seller rebate is a certain amount that the seller would accept to credit to the buyer when closing on the property. And it could be based on different aspects. It could be for repairs that are to be done on the property, but maybe that the sellers don't want to do. And I usually advise my clients to ask for the rebate and do the repairs yourself, as opposed to asking the seller to do the repairs. Because think about it, the person is leaving, they're done with the property.
They're going to shortchange it.
If you're going to ask them to do anything, they'll probably just patch up a couple of things.
Right.
Whereas you, as the new home buyer, you would probably want to do it your own way or with your own taste and whatnot. So it's better to get a rebate you get a credit from the seller, and then you can use that amount to do the repairs yourself. So that's one of the reasons. But it could also be for things like just assisting you with the process. And so these strategies, and that's why I mentioned about being strategic when using them, they can only work depending on the story around the property, right? In other words, if you get a house that just got on the market, there's a lot of traffic and interest for it, chances are the seller, if they have like 10 other offers, will probably not want to do a seller rebate, because why would they, right? They have 10 other people that are interested in the property, willing to pay maybe more than what you've offered. But if you find a property that maybe has been on the market a little longer, that probably needs more TLC because of the repairs that are needed, then the seller is a bit more motivated to give a credit or come up with creative ways to actually sell the home. So that's where I come in as a realtor, to help you look at all these aspects and identify strategically the moves we can do to get the home at the price you want.
Listen, I don't know if you guys know, I got to make sure you do know though, this is the value in having a realtor, because we're at a junction where having one might be questionable amongst some other groups, but I don't believe so. This lawsuit that was passed, I don't believe clients should go without representation, because there's so much strategy in knowing how to ask for something like that, and then also knowing how and when to ask for something like that. Those are two components only experience is going to give you. And you're not going to just walk into a transaction and know something like that. That takes a lot of experience to actually have that wisdom and be able to use it when it's needed is something you absolutely need, and can only be considered a strength when you're entering into a negotiation, right? I was talking to a realtor one time, and we were, back in the pandemic, we were debating having an inspection done early in the process. And because at that time offers were so difficult to be accepted, because it was a seller's market. They were naming their price. They could do what they wanted almost, right? So the realtor was saying, there were times where he would advise, I don't know if you want to get an inspection done, because this is a very competitive market we're in. Now, from my perspective, I just felt like that was you're putting a blindfold on.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I always advise my clients to get a home inspection done. Like, you are not about to invest like hundreds and thousands of dollars and not do an inspection.
I love the way you put that. You are not about to, not on my watch.
It would absolutely, because it's something, and I don't care how competitive the market is. This is something you want to get done to get peace of mind. Now, I'll give you a very personal example. I purchased a home a few months back in the fall, and so we did not. Here's the thing, and again, to go back to how you strategically do things, we knew it was a very competitive market. We knew this house had multiple offers, because right going in, the agent told me we already have several offers on the table. But I was still able to get the house by asking, doing an inspection, but the purchase of the home was not contingent on the inspection. So I would say, even at the worst case scenario, it's super competitive, still do an inspection. You want to get that inspection report to get a sense of what you're getting yourself into. Now, the thing is, if it's not contingent to the inspection, it could mean that you can back out as a result of the inspection, but still, you know what repairs are needed, and you can still negotiate further with the seller on the basis of what comes out of the inspection. So rule number one, always get the inspection done for sure, and make it contingent. If you really must remove that contingency sort of term and condition, then still do it. You still want to know what you're buying, right?
No, I couldn't agree with that more. I just felt like, you're right, especially for first time. buyers, man.
Absolutely.
This is the, up to this point,
Yes.
this is one of the biggest purchases you're ever
Oh,
gonna
yes.
make,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
you got to do this right.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure you feel as safe as possible, because number one, there is a such thing as buyer's remorse. I've seen it. I have seen it, right? And it, with it being such a huge
Yes.
decision,
Yes.
transaction, the remorse
Yeah.
is even
Yeah.
bigger, you know.
I can't even tell you how many times you would have a client putting in an offer, sleeping on it, and then calling you the next morning and say, "Hey, we slept on it. I think we want to pull our offer," and it's totally normal. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier. That's where representation becomes important, because you have a third party that helps you go through the emotional roller coaster.
Yes, we are
involved
counselors
in the process.
Yes.
I was telling you earlier, I represented myself when I was purchasing my home. And even as a trained realtor, I thought to myself, man, this was such an emotional roller coaster, because you're close to it.
Right.
You get emotional,
Big deal.
and everything affects you 10 times more.
Yeah.
So having this person that's right next to you, that's a bit cool-headed, not so close to the emotional aspect of the transaction, can help you move confidently and strategically.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I love that you just touched on the emotional side of things, right? Because you're taking me into my next question. We do have an element of having to counsel, having to calm. And believe it or not, and forever, whatever dude or whoever may be watching this, right? I know there may be some guys out there. We don't like to admit that we suffer from anxiety sometimes. Right? From man to man. Yeah. We don't like to admit that we get fearful. Our fear might come out in anger, right? But we might burst because we're feeling a little bit anxious, but we don't recognize or title it as such. But we get anxious in that process. And I find myself having to, sometimes when I'm speaking with couples, I'm having to use strategic words and phrases to speak to the husband first, and then speak to the wife. I'm having myself to figure out who's the decision maker, no pun intended. And then whatever works for you. But I'm also finding that, I can only imagine that the human resource side of things might come in handy here.
Absolutely.
But knowing what to say and how to say it when it comes to the emotional roller coaster that this process brings, because I have not been in a perfect process yet. I have not had a buyer that goes into home buying and it's just been a clean slate.
Right.
There is always something.
Yeah.
Speak to that.
Absolutely. And I think right in part of the conversation we have when we do our first consult call is I manage my client's expectation in terms of what the process might be like, and to know right off the gate that it's going to be a stressful process. My goal now is to reduce that stress level as much as possible, to identify stressors and remove them. But it's going to be stressful. So getting that right out of the gate is key. And I think the second piece too is understanding there are different parties involved, and the more people involved in that makes it sometimes even more stressful, because you have the other realtor, you have the lenders, and everybody involved in the transaction. So my role is to sort of diffuse the stress level for everyone, so that we can understand each other, making sure the communications are clear and stress-free, so that it's a smoother sailing than everybody sort of getting at it, and it creates stress for everyone involved.
Yeah, no, you're walking me into my next point, because once you guys get to me, once you found the home, offers accepted, she's negotiated, used her wisdom, and now we're getting ready to buy this house. My question was going to be, how are you preparing them? Because once you get to me, man, you're going to have a bit of a bumpy road. And I don't mean that because things are going to go wrong, but we're going to bother you. We need paperwork, right? The underwriter is going to be combing through your file, combing through your financials, combing through your financial history. And there's gonna be, things that we're gonna ask for, explanation letters, right? Documents, tax returns, all kinds of things that we're gonna need from you in order to be able to tell your financial story and to build you a financial case for this underwriter's approval. And I know that could be a bit anxious sometimes because you could be at work and we have a limited amount of time in order to meet a certain window or a certain time frame. And a lot of times that's not something you want on your table or you want to hear, because even when the phone rings and you see my name sometimes, you get a bit of anxiety. You know what I'm saying? How are you preparing your clients? You've already negotiated, the offers accepted. How are you walking them through the rest of this process?
No, that's an important point you're bringing up, and that's something I like to anticipate. So there's a phase I call the preparedness phase, which is making sure that you have the conversation with a lender ahead of me stepping in as a realtor and helping you either sell or buy. And particularly with buyers, making sure that you get started with a lender, you get pre-approved, you understand sort of what that period during which you're buying the home is going to require in terms of things not to do. Like we all heard of some of the nightmare stories of people either, I don't know, switching jobs or getting a new credit card or buying a car.
Shopping for furniture before you close.
Shopping for furniture, exactly. So all of these elements are things I like for my clients to discuss with a lender beforehand. You get all that information, you know what to expect during the process, and you're not going into it blindly. So that preparedness phase is key for me.
It is.
And I always hand it over to a professional because I'm on the property side, and I know a little bit about mortgage, but I like to work with specialists that really know how to best counsel you on that end.
We appreciate that because we do too. We allow you guys to do your job, and we do appreciate the space to do ours with the proper communication channels, right? Because there's times where we have to team up with a realtor to get what we need from the borrower. You know what I mean? There's times when we get our processors involved, they're reaching out, they don't get a response, then I have to reach out, I don't get a response, then I have to reach out to the realtor so that she or he may be able to get a response. Because it gets tight, it really gets tight. And our turn times when it comes to underwriting, when it comes to the appraisal coming in, and when we're getting close to closing, we're on time frames, 3 days disclosures, right? All kinds of things that we're up against where we need you to respond. We need you to be responsive. And I love the fact that that this is going to cause a bit of an emotional roller coaster and preparing them up front. And also, sidebar, thank you for saying that you need them to talk to a lender first. Because there are realtors who want to be everything for the client. And I get that mindset when it comes to being solution oriented and to being a one-stop shop. But there is a certain niche that you don't have that another professional does. And one of the wisest things I've had to learn in this business is to lean on somebody else's wisdom.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's like, it's nothing wrong with me saying, you know what, I'll get right back to you. I got to get that answer. I don't know.
Exactly.
There's so much wisdom in that.
Absolutely. I believe in jack of all trades, master of none. So whenever you're trying to be everything, you end up not mastering anything. So in that sense, I stay and I stay and get clarity in my sphere of work and let other professionals bring their expertise and their knowledge and help you better. And there's even one thing I've learned over my time in that industry too is there are different lenders for different types of acquisitions. So a lender might be very well versed in one type of loans and maybe not other types of loans. And so you also need to know who your lender is and what their expertise is to better counsel your clients in that sense.
And vice versa. We need to know the realtor who understands a certain market they're working in, right? Because she's in the DMV area, but she may not be experienced in Hartford County, right? That doesn't mean that she can't. but to know when to use and how to use. We go
Absolutely.
back to that wisdom on how to go about doing this business
Yep.
and when to reach out to the people you
Yep.
need. I agree
Yep.
with that
Yep.
wholeheartedly.
And to your point, I have no problem referring a client that comes to me for a market I'm not familiar with to
Yep.
another realtor.
Yep.
I'd rather they have a much better experience with a realtor that's familiar with that market, and they're happy, and they may be a repeat client down the road, than me trying to venture into a market I don't know, and then they have a horrible experience, and that affects my reputation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and we've also been in circumstances where, you know, the client's going to get a better deal going with the new construction lender. You know,
yeah,
and we don't hesitate in those moments to say, no, this is going to be the best.
yeah,
Right? You know, they may be giving up a certain amount of incentives.
yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't use an outside lender, but man, if that's the best deal, that's the best deal. And at the end of the day, man, we pride ourselves on caring about your future in
Yes.
this
Yes.
game here.
I operate from an abundance mentality,
Yes.
meaning whenever I'm in a relationship, a business relationship with someone, it's never short-sighted in that next transaction. It's always the long term.
Yep.
And I don't let any sort of scarcity mentality affect the way I'm in that relationship with the person.
Yeah.
There's enough for all of us to go around.
Yep.
And so if it's not with that home, maybe it's going to be with another purchase down the road, and I can be of assistance down the road.
Yeah, yeah.
So I always have the client's interest in mind first.
Yeah. You know, I love this. You know, I love the conversation we're having here. Because we're on the underlying politics of the business right now. Right? We're not on the surface. This is not about close, receive a commission, and we move on to the next. Right? And I love that about you because, you know, you care on another level. Care is a big word in this business because a lot of people don't care.
Yes.
In real estate, a lot of people
Yes.
do not care about you. They only care about what they can get from you.
Yeah.
And you know, it's big to understand and educate. You know, I'm big on making sure that we pour in, making sure that you have sustainable home ownership and something you can leverage. And you have an asset here in Baltimore as well. You know, talk to me a little bit about how you're speaking to your clients about what they can do with their asset after they close.
And are you talking from an investment standpoint,
Yep.
or more like a homeowner?
Well, you know, it's interesting you
Residence.
said homeowner, but I am talking about leveraging the asset, right? Actually using the asset, transitioning maybe into the investment side of things.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yes. And that's one of the again one of the core reasons why I do what I do. I love being able to teach people or show people or coach them on how to use real estate to start building that legacy or that portfolio.
Yeah.
And it can start with your home. Now, if you start with your home, depending on the property and the sort of parameters around the property, you can have built-in equity. And the equity is basically the value that the home gets over the years. And so if you have some built-in equity right when you purchase, then that's where it gets interesting, where you can start leveraging that equity, whether it's getting a line of credit on the home that can allow you to have some funds to now take and invest into a second property.
Love it.
But if you don't have immediate equity, don't despair. This is a long-term game. This is also what people have to remember. There's no, and I know social media will make us think that there's quick money to be made. Real estate is a long-term game. So if you are starting and you're starting with your own home, then slowly you will build equity on that home, and you'll be in a position to use that equity to buy your next property or your next investment property.
Yeah.
But the minute you're able to get access to that, your first investment property now becomes a tool for you to grow that portfolio. And for aspiring investors, for me, where I like to start with them is start by doing your research. Because I know Social media again makes it seem really fun.
Yeah.
Being a landlord and buying investment properties. But man, there is so much to learn.
I've heard some more
about
stories.
it. Because the first thing is you need to figure out what type of investor you are.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you want to be hands-on or hands-off. Hands-on meaning you manage that property on a regular basis, and that means getting calls from your tenants or whatever type of investment you want to do as well. Whether it's long-term rental, short-term rental, because now it's sexy. People see those Airbnb things on social media. So I think first it starts with educating yourself in terms of what type of investor do I want to be, where could I potentially invest. Do I want to invest within, an hour drive of where I live? Do I want to invest out of state? There's so many questions you could start asking yourself. Man, I love the investment side of the business and I can talk about it for hours, but I would say start by doing your research and educating yourself, and then get the help of a professional who can help you navigate the investment side of things. Because that's also another thing. On the investment side, knowing your numbers and making sure that the numbers work is key.
Yes.
And that will either make for a great investment story or a nightmare if you don't know how to run these numbers and make sure that when you purchase, you're already sort of profitable. Because that's also the thing. If you're purchasing with the hope that you're going to make money, then
this is game right here.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Game right here.
The day you close, it already needs to make sense. The numbers need to work there, then and there. So yeah, we could talk more about it, but these are the top 3 things I would say.
All right, so let's not rush away from it too quickly here. Sure. I wanted to touch on the hands-on, hands-off type of investor. Tell me a little bit more about what a borrower should expect if he were a hands-on or if she were a hands-off.
Yeah, totally. So the way I define a more hands-on investor is one that, you're going to be managing the property from A to Z yourself. Meaning you have to, if you buy the property and there are repairs to be done, you'll be the one managing the contractors with the repairs, making sure that they're done properly, they're done to code. It's not going to be your job to make sure they're done to code, but making sure you have a contractor who's licensed who can do them to code. Getting all the proper licenses you need, like rental license. If you're investing in Baltimore here, not just in Baltimore, in Maryland, lead is a big thing. Making sure it's lead free or lead. I'm forgetting the other term. Sort of lead safe for your renters. So there are many things.
So there's a level.
There are levels, exactly. You either, I think, I'm forgetting the exact date, but it's any property that was built before, I want to say 75. I might be wrong on that date here. Don't quote me on it. But before a certain number of years, the property, there are chances that the property has lead in the paint. So you need to make sure that it's lead safe for families that are going to be renting your place. So there are a couple of things you need to do on that end. And then there's managing the property. So looking for tenants, running background checks, making it easy for them to be able to pay rent. If there's because everybody's heard of the plumbing issues in the middle of the night. Yeah, you gotta answer too. Yeah, you gotta manage that. You gotta have either your contractor on site or a handyman, someone who can you can call and help the tenants with that situation. So that's what I'm talking about when I say being hands-on. The other option could be a more hands-off option where you get a property management company to run and manage the property for you. And that'll come at a cost, right? And this is a cost that you need to factor in right when you're doing your research to know if you're going to be profitable or not. So that the property management companies, they'll range, their fees will range between 8 to 12%, sometimes a bit more. But you need to factor that in. And so that company will manage everything related to your property. You're not the one they're calling in the middle of the night if there's a plumbing issue. It's them.
Right.
And so they manage the property and you're more hands-off.
Yeah, this is key right here, man. I love the detail you just went into. Now, what about location? right? You would just have to think that, location, location, location. They tell you all the time.
Yeah.
Location is kind of key to having a profitable asset.
Yeah.
Where you buy is just as important as how you manage.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. And I would say where you buy is also um, depending on the type of asset class that you're getting and the type of investment property you're managing. In other words, if I am looking to rent a property for long-term tenants,
Mhm.
right? Um, then the location, I'd have to be mindful of, okay, what are the schools around that location? Is if I'm targeting families, like what are things that families can do around that location?
Mhm.
Am I trying to do affordable living? In which case, who am I targeting, and who can I help with the property? Or if I'm looking at short-term rental, because we know it's a very popular thing right now. If I'm looking at short-term rental, then it's a different lens altogether. I have to think about who's coming here to rent short-term. Is it a vacation destination, or who's renting it short-term? Who's renting here short-term? So location is also depending on the type of investment that you have.
Yeah, so you have to understand the type of client you want moving into your
Exactly.
investment. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's pretty good. So let me ask you, you've given so much information on walking up to the transaction, looking for your transaction, preparing for the bones and the guts of the transaction, speaking to the emotions involving the transaction, leveraging the asset in the transaction. Let's make a little bit of a pivot here. Where do you see how do you see the role of a realtor evolving, moving forward in the next maybe 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and timely, because we're all hearing about the latest NAR, the Association of the National Association of Realtors lawsuit and settlement, and a lot of people are asking themselves questions about the future of the realtor profession. I think with all of that, and especially in the sort of era of information we're in, um, where realtors are going to bring value is less about the information that they're going to be able to provide and the access, because now everybody has access to information online. You have access to MLS site or different kind of sites that see home and access home. So if, as a realtor, my only value is to be able to show you a house or regurgitate whatever information I can find online, then you can do that on your own. The real value I think a realtor can bring today, and that's where I think the role is going to go in the future, is how I can be able to be a strategic partner and thinking partner with you in the situation. So help understanding your individual situation and help you do the best move, considering that with all the parameters in the market. So your financial situation, your local market situation, what I was mentioning earlier, how we're strategically crafting an offer for the other party to be enticed and want to choose your offer over the next one. That's where I see the value, and being that emotional buffer as well for what we were mentioning earlier with the emotional roller coaster the process involves. So that's where I see the role being and going in the future.
No, I completely agree with you. And listen, if you listen to this interview, and a lot of people say that knowledge is power, and I disagree, because you can have all the knowledge in the world and not apply it. So there's still a bit of ignorance in that gap, because if you don't know how to apply that information, you are still ignorant to the game here. And real estate, you have to know how to apply the information. Not just know how to apply it, but know when to apply certain aspects of the information that you obtain too. And that comes with wisdom, experience. That's the value of a realtor right there. And you've heard her experience. Nadgele, Zephir, EXP. Tell everybody how they can get in contact with you.
Yes, so I can be reached on Instagram with my full name, nadgele.zephir. on Instagram. I also have a YouTube page that I'm starting to get some
Okay.
educational content out there.
Get them over there.
Yeah. And over email, they can also reach me at nadgele.zephir@exprealty.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do not overlook this amount of wisdom. All right. See you guys next time. Peace.